Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian Saperstein, that's Rob Vale. We just finished watching the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Rob, why don't you talk about what we're going to talk about today?
Today we'll get back into the groove like we did last week, where we'll hit news and social. We'll do a quick walk down memory lane of the practice and qualifying highlights, and then we'll hit the race hard again or we'll try to. I mean, we'll have to try and eke this out for this episode because not a lot happened. There wasn't much to talk about, but we'll kind of do our best. And
I can't tell if you're kidding or not because I actually thought it was action-packed.
And then we'll round out the episode. We've got another 100 seconds of DRS guests, which is great. And then we've got to try and make up what on earth we're doing next week because there isn't a race. But we'll come to that at the end. So let's just jump in at the beginning. There wasn't a huge amount this week. We kind of got the news broke early on in the week that Vettel was going to be out again, which I feel really sorry for him to miss the opening two. But, you know, it is what it is with the testing protocols, so
I hope he's well. I hope he's doing great. But, I mean, at the same time, he wasn't going to be fighting for the Drivers' Championship, especially seeing where this Aston Martin's putting him anyway. So I feel bad for him. I feel bad for the team. He's a great champion, but, let's hope he comes back healthy.
Yeah, definitely. And then we had two rule clarifications, which one of them actually we saw play out in the race today, which was actually really good, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the first one was clarifying the rules on safe overtaking. And there are paragraphs of this, but I've never seen so much written without so little being clarified, because it's, where is it? Here it is, with when overtaking on the inside. So they've clarified outside versus inside. So it's not just overtaking. You've got to know whether you're overtaking on the inside or the outside. And now a driver being overtaken must give sufficient room to an overtaking car if a significant portion is alongside. And then they proceed to not explicitly define what a significant portion of a car is, or what sufficient room is. So we're tidying up the rules while still giving enough room to let the stewards come in and let everyone shout at each other for not being enough room, and was he a significant portion ahead or not. But they say they're going to look at the overtaking car's front tyres, and if they're alongside the car by no later than the apex of the corner. So then they kind of tail off with something that sounds a little bit more tangible that they can measure. Pretty much the same rules for overtake on the outside again, so I'm not really sure why they broke it into two, because it's the same wording. It's about sufficient room and significant portion and blah, 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 blah.
Well, I mean, and we saw that today, especially the giving the place back if need be.
Well, that's the second rule, yeah. That's the second clarification, yeah.
So hit that, because we're not going to get into what happened today yet, but it happened. Like, it was ready to be done today, and we saw how bad this version is. So what is the rule now?
So the rule now is that I think, from a personal perspective, it's to try to not put the race director in the firing line as much and hand a little bit of the responsibility over to the teams, which is that if you've got an unfair advantage from going off the track or what have you, it's now basically left to the drivers and the teams to work it out amongst themselves. And if they don't work it out amongst themselves, then the stewards will kind of jump in. And I thought we saw that today, and I actually thought it worked pretty well. It's whether or not it's the first, because what we basically had was... Oh my gosh, I've got to look at my notes again now. Who do we have jumping ahead? It was
Checo and Carlos. And Carlos was coming out of the pits, and he crossed the safety car line first ahead of Checo. Checo kind of ran him off the road a little bit, but in reality, Carlos had the position. He should have been third. And what happened was, because the stewards and the race director don't get involved, and they were waiting for the teams to handle it, they did, but they handled it after the safety car restart, which the announcers explained it does make sense because you're not allowed to change positions under the safety car. So it's like two teams can't make that decision, or I guess one team, Red Bull in this case, when Checo was in third and should have been in fourth, couldn't drop back and swap places with Carlos. But that put Carlos at a big disadvantage starting fourth under the safety car. I know Checo pulled over pretty fast and people can argue both sides. To me, that was still a little bit of getting in his way, and if I'm Carlos, I'd have much preferred to start the safety car restart third, which he should have been, and which the race director could have made happen under a safety car because they have that authority. But by delegating it to the teams, which is kind of like saying to my daughters, hey, if you guys are mad at each other, just solve it yourself, which is BS. I don't like that. I don't like that rule at all. And I recognize they're trying to, uphold the standards of the teams and themselves, the gentlemanliness of Formula One. But come on now, man.
No, you see, I mean, you can't help being wrong. But I do like that. I like the whole thing that the teams can't go running and hiding behind, mean old race control penalise us for this and put everything back on race control. We all know what happened last year and how race control did screw up. So I do like some of it being devolved back over to the teams. And I thought they did. They worked it out amongst themselves. It flashed up on the top of the screen that was going to be the stewards were going to look at it. But then once they gave the position back, they went, nah, we're good. All good. Nothing to see here. Move on. So I kind of like that. So,
But this was a great example of Carlos getting disadvantaged because
not really.
They don't have
He let him by.
Oh, no, come on. It was
Where
not
did he finish?
immediate.
He didn't. We'll get into this in the race, but he didn't have the pace to stick with the top two, and he finished third. So how did he get disadvantaged?
Well, he might have been a lot closer to Max. He might have motored off into the sunset in third with no one behind. I mean, who knows?
Anyway, let's get to the race when we get to the race. Let's keep going through. We can
Don't
argue about this
disadvantage my
later.
Carlos. I'm going to get Carlos on the phone. Carlos, can you hear us? We need your opinion here, man.
I'm disadvantaging your part of the conversation and deferring it to later. That's what the stewards say. So then we, as the build-up to the race week came out, Alfa Romeo came out and said that they're still suffering with clutch issues, which again I think we saw at the beginning of today's race, but not for Bottas this time. Which is Bottas said something like he wasn't confident going on the way to the grid last week because it had almost been a 50-50 strike rate with this clutch vibration issue. So he had no idea when when the green light when the lights go out and he wants to floor it, no idea if he really knows he's going to get any traction. So they said they thought they had some kind of short-term fix, but I'm not sure if Valtteri was fixed today or he just got the lucky 50% of the draw, and Zhou got the unlucky 50% of the draw. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But that was a terrible start for Zhou, and then I mean it went from there into anti-stall. So I mean he was really the announcers are like it was honestly I thought it was the safety car or the medical car coming around the corner at the end. I'm like, oh, that's the Alfa Romeo. What the heck happened? And so yeah, they got to figure that out.
And then kind of one of the final things was, I know that Formula One is such a scientific sport, and they always go on about how every gram of weight makes a difference to speed, but there was a number of teams that were being reported to going back over their cars again and removing paint from any surface that didn't really require painting. And Aston said that they'd managed to remove 350 grams of weight by leaving bare carbon fibre in places that didn't need painting. I don't even know how they work this stuff out, but it just kind of any type of place you can find an advantage or you can find a gain. I mean, that's why these guys are paid the big bucks, right?
That's 3/4 of a pound. So basically, if someone didn't have Chipotle for dinner the night before the race, same kind of weight savings.
And last but definitely not least, he might not be troubling the World Championship this year. We'll see. It's only 2 races in. But Lewis Hamilton can still not be beaten on race day arrival outfits.
They were like multicolored as well. Like each day was a different color. I was trying to figure out if they were like traffic lights. I think there was a red or yellow and a green.
Oh, I mean, it was something else. It really was. Okay. Then we got into the race week itself, and we won't do too much on practice. The only one I wanted to call out really was, we discussed this earlier, was Danny Rick's Jedi mind tricks with the falling sign. Your favourite thing, car radio. He saw a sign that he said was coming loose on the side of the track, and he said, hey, that sign looks like it's coming loose, and maybe any minute it could fall off, and if it falls off, maybe someone will drive through it and obliterate it. I mean, he basically forecast the entire thing that was about to happen, and it was it Lando that came and smashed through that sign in about 3 seconds later.
Right behind him, it was Lando. Yeah, totally called it. It was interesting to me. I actually thought practice, the thing I really learned, especially, just Mercedes being near the bottom, and it really kind of gave me some pause on my team, my fantasy team. And I actually made some late changes, which fantasy is not updated again. We're recording quickly, so we will give the shouts out the week prior, I think, at this point. The week post, I should say. And so it was sad to see kind of the all of the Mercedes-powered cars just falling towards the bottom of the time. But again, it's practice, so you never know exactly what they're running and how they're going to be when quali comes. So let's talk about qualifying a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, qualifying... So just before jumping on to qualifying, you're right, I did the same thing. I did a quick knee-jerk. I swapped Sainz, as much as I love him, I swapped Sainz for Charles. And after last week, swapping Lewis out for Max at the 11th hour. So Because you're right, they didn't seem to have the pace. And then guess what happened in Q1? I think it was just basically fastest finger first as to who texted each of us out the first when it was like, Lewis, oh my God.
What is happening? It was, I mean, and then when he was in 15th, so, Q1, got to be in the top 15, and Lewis is 15th. And he just made it to 15th, and you're thinking, is he going to be safe? And then right behind him, Lance Stroll comes back right through and bumps him to 16th. And you're just, wow, how did that happen? And the same car as George, who clearly qualified better. It was just fascinating to me to watch that happen. And I was, again, because of fantasy, I made some shifts. I'd actually gotten rid of Carlos, which is a mistake, but I put in Max, which was not a mistake. But in order to make that happen, I also had to get rid of George, and I put in Yuki. And as I watched Yuki in the garage for the entirety of the weekend at this point, he's still in the garage. They're still working on whatever the hell's wrong with his car. I watched Yuki. I'm literally yelling at the television, get Yuki out of the garage! And so I realized fantasy has taken over my life, and I apologize for that. I'm going to dial it down, just for all the listeners who know how much I enjoy the fantasy. I'm going to dial it down a couple clicks. But I was screaming at the television, please get Yuki out of the garage.
And then we had in Q2, we had the moment that we'd kind of all been worrying about with this track of high speeds and walls. And thankfully, Mick's crash looked spectacular but hasn't done him any damage. I think it was testament to the way these cars are designed to fall apart now to try to disperse all the impact. And actually, once I saw the first replay and saw that he'd gone into the wall sideways, I was kind of a lot more hopeful that we weren't going to be getting any kind of like bad news around him in terms of his condition, because if that thing had gone in nose first, we could have been telling a different story. But it was nice to see a couple of drivers, Valtteri, I think Charles as well, kind of slowing down next to the wreck to make sure that he seemed to be okay.
Yeah,
but that was quite a shunt.
Valtteri, the first one through, with the onboard that we saw of him pulling over and giving the thumbs up and waiting for Mick to respond. Reminiscent of Seb with Lando at Spa last year. And so it was great. I loved seeing Valtteri do that. This is going to be unpopular, and I'm not going to wander too far into this. I'm not a big fan of this race nor this track. And we have talked about it. For anyone who's listened to all of our episodes, we both worry about this track. It's a high speed. It's one of the highest speed courses of the season, but it's a street circuit, and it's just concrete walls lining the course. And it's interesting to watch. It's fun to watch. But what happened to Mick could have been a lot worse, and that's exactly what I've been worried about for quite some time. And I know we had more safety cars last year than this year. But to me, between that and the missiles flying overhead the day before, or missile, I should say, singular, flying overhead the day before, a 4-hour driver meeting and well into the middle of the night, Friday night into Saturday, to determine whether they'd keep racing, and then a course which it just seems dangerous. I mean, it's just like it's dangerous enough, the sport of Formula One. I just don't know why you need one of the highest speed courses to have walls around the entirety of it. So to me, when I saw Mick go in, and anyone following our Twitter, which I'm the social media intern of, knew that I was just beside myself, just hoping he was going to be all right. It was an interminable amount of time until we actually had an update on him and that he was moving, and seeing that was great. But if I were the head of Formula One, which we all know I should be, we'd be running out the contract on Jeddah as fast as possible. And I think there's another course they're going to set up in Saudi Arabia. As a whole, I would struggle a little bit with where the races are run and the safety of the participants. And I don't just mean on track, but even in the hotel and things of that sort. So to me, it's a big risk.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's two aspects to this track. So if I put to one side kind of the location and all the stuff that was happening around that, and we just kind of look at the track, I'd said to you, I predicted 3 safety cars and maybe even a couple of red flags in this race. I was happy to be proven wrong. Okay, we got the safety car. We didn't have any major pileups. Even the safety car itself, there were no major pileups today. There were no kind of debris everywhere other than kind of that one kind of really almost a kiss on the wall, to be honest. So I don't know if the widening of the track did lead to better visibility through corners, which has meant that we didn't get that domino effect of cars collecting each other. I don't know if the new cars this year, the way they're designed, led to anything, or whether we just got absolutely sheer dumb luck that nothing happened this year. I don't know. It led to a really exciting race that we're going to talk about, but yeah, I'm not fully reversed on the view. While I think we got away with it and we didn't get as many red flags and safety cars, yeah, I'm with you. It's Monaco on steroids.
Yeah,
and it probably shouldn't be on the circuit, but. Let's look at happier times. We moved through into Q3.
It's Monzaco.
Monzaco.
Is what it is the speed and the walls. And then, but you're right, Q3. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Q3. I mean, Ferrari looked unbeatable. The car just looked like it was on rails, and it was just a fight out between the two Ferrari drivers to see who was going to get it on pole. Leclerc went through it on right at the 11th hour, and Sainz was on a poor lap behind him. So you were like, well, that's it then. I mean, Sainz had looked like he was the one bringing it this week. And then Leclerc went and pulled it out. I'm like, well done, Leclerc. That's a classic pole. That's awesome. And all of a sudden, they're like, but Perez is on an absolute flying lap. And they joined him. He went over that curb. I think it's either turn 11 or turn 12. Yep. He went over that and probably took about half an inch off the surface of that curb. He caught it so hard. But it didn't seem to slow him down, nor did he leave the track limits. There was the left-hand side of the car was still on the right side of those curbs. And I haven't been as happy seeing somebody get a pole position for such a long time. It was just amazing.
Oh, I mean, I thought it was fantastic. It reminded me of the most commonly used Sapstats music. Watching Checo on pole was great. It reminded me when he won in Bahrain a couple years ago when he was with Racing Point, his first win. I was so excited for him. It was a great lap, like you said. I think he even said afterwards, if I'd done that 100 times, I don't think I could replicate that lap. Just tremendous. And Max finished fourth, which was confusing. I didn't see that coming. I knew it would be Red Bull, Ferrari at the top. I didn't anticipate Max being at the lowest of those four contenders.
I don't know whether the pace just seemed to not be in that final run. I think he kind of said the same thing as well, because he'd done a couple of laps where he was like staying out for an extra lap before he really went at his hot one. So who knows? Maybe he was just struggling. He didn't tend to struggle today, so I guess it all kind of works out. So
it certainly did, and that brings us to today, which brought me back to my fantasy team. I barely made it to the start of the race, and then all I hear is Crofty saying, and Yuki Tsunoda will not be in the race today. I said, crap. So there's a 0. It's probably a negative for my fantasy team. I feel bad for Yuki because he was the only one who finished of the 4 Red Bull powertrains last week. And I was expecting some pace from him. But, it was a great race. I really enjoyed the race. And I don't know what you said. There wasn't a lot to talk about. I mean, I actually had a lot of notes here in my mind. I really enjoyed the start. Ferrari and Red Bull at the front. I can't. You're laughing. I don't. Is it at me or with me? But
yeah, at you. You've got to get your sarcasm radar tuned in because there was absolutely lots to talk about, and I got lots of notes as well. So
I didn't get a lot of sleep. Spirit Airlines decided I didn't deserve any sleep last night, so thanks, Spirit. And then Zhou Guanyu, like you said, he had the Valtteri start this week, but even worse. And I know we kind of talked about the clutch when we were talking about the news. It was horrible, and I joked about it, but you saw all the cars go by, and then all of a sudden another car came around the corner at the back, and I'm thinking, well, that's, Bernd Mailander, and that's the medical car coming around. Nope, that's Zhou Guanyu coming around, and they showed his in-car, and he's an anti-stall. I mean, the guy did nothing wrong that we know of. I mean, but when the car goes into anti-stall, he's just trying to keep it moving forward.
I was going to say, he may as well have been in reverse, to be honest, the way that start went, because it was just terrible. But you kind of just picked on, you said it was a great start, and what I really liked the replay of the start was the overhead, because I couldn't really understand how Max had managed to leap Sainz so easily, and it was all of Sainz's own doing, really, because for some reason he went to the outside as if he was going to put a move on Charles, then maybe thought better of it because it's his teammate and there was no room anyway.
He wasn't far enough up.
And by the time he pinned himself into that, Max had kind of gone, thanks very much, I'll take the inside line here then.
Which is fascinating. I mean, it was no harm, no foul. I mean, Carlos did it to himself. Carlos Sainz got split up there from second and third. But then one of my favorite kind of couple things of the entire race happened next, and it was Alpine. And it was Fernando and Esteban. and the nonstop back and forth. Valtteri snuck in there and said, "Hey, can I get a taste of this action?" K-Mag came up behind, "Can I get in some of this too?" They interviewed Otmar Schaffenauer right as this was going. And Otmar is great. And he gave, I don't know how he interviewed during this. I would have been beside myself. And the two of them just kept going back and forth. It was so great. And I hadn't thought of this, but Alpine, with the BWT, the pink car, the pink livery, are they the Alpinks?
Oh, man.
No, that's not going to work here.
That's going to work. You really didn't get any sleep on the flight, did you?
No,
but
I didn't.
It was awesome. And it just followed on from last week. Was last week a fluke? Can these cars follow? Can they really stay in behind? And so far, 2 races in, the answer is a resounding yes. I also want to do a call out for Fernando Alonso for joining the dirty side, because on lap 5, that's exactly where he went to try and take Ocon on the wrong side, went all there, threw all manner of dirt up into the air. And I was like, yep, that's because you want to throw a shout out to the dirty side. Thanks, Fernando. But it was excellent. It was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then that kind of took us from like 5 through 9 were just, I think they made a joke about it on the commentary team that Alpine will be happy because the sponsors will have just basically had the TV lockout from their cars were on TV constantly for like about 5 laps. And then we had...
Danny Rick with 10. The world's earliest pit stop? 9 or 10? What was that?
I don't know.
I thought they were retiring the car when I saw him in the pits. I'm like, this is early. And then he came flying back out. I'm like, what?
But it was absolutely a bizarre one. And then we kind of went into a little spell where everyone started moving throughout the field. So we kind of had Lewis put a great move on Lando, Valtteri on Ocon. And then that was kind of between 10 through kind of about 15. We just had lots of these little moves where people were just able to follow cars, get past them. Great to see. And then we got lap 16, where we had the Ferrari bluff for the pit stop.
Amazing.
It was amazing.
But was it a bluff? I
honestly think it was a we're going to do the opposite of Red Bull.
Yeah, I agree.
But we're going to make it look like we're coming in first, but we're only really getting our guys out into the pit lane in case Red Bull don't go in, then we'll go in. But I don't know, there's an element of bluff in there, I think, as well, and it was superb.
It was weird because twice Charles said on his radio, box to overtake. Like, he was announcing my goal of coming in now is to basically get ahead of Sergio. Yep. It's not like box, confirm, pit stop now, confirm, change tire. He actually explained why they'd be doing it. I've never heard the driver do that.
Which is just why I'm kind of thinking there's the bluff element in there. Because like you say, it's like over the top. In case anybody can hear this radio...
Exactly. Dear Sky Sports, please let Red Bull know we're planning to box at this lap. And then, but you're right. I love the fact he stayed out. And here was sort of my karmic note of the race week. As Checo came in and as Charles stayed out, Nicholas Latifi, the Williams driver, lost it. And it looked like it just kind of like the car lost him. I don't think he did too much on that one. It just the Williams lost grip.
I think he put his foot down a bit too
early. A little early, tiny bit, but not that much. I mean, it wasn't like egregious like we've seen. But again, the wall so close. Regardless, what happened is Nicholas Latifi reran what happened in Abu Dhabi at the end of last year when he binned it, Nicholas Latifi, and allowed Max a free pit stop on Lewis. This time, Nicholas Latifi binned it and allowed Ferrari free pit stops on Checo. And I was beside myself. Checo's not my favorite driver, but I hold him dear. I think he's awesome. I love watching him race. He is a racer's racer, and I love watching him. And when his pit stop cost him, 2 times, 3 times as much time because of 2 times really, because of the VSC and then safety car, I felt bad for him. But so Latifi kind of paid back Red Bull.
You're not a fan of the VSC into safety car, are you?
No, I don't get it. Like, make a decision. So if you pit under VSC, it's much different than pitting under safety car. And they do almost a full lap of virtual safety car before then deciding it's a safety car. There are clearly going to have to be marshals on track to get these cars off.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how they do it,
the
right?
car is broken, and it's laying there, and the guy's getting out, the wheel's off. He took a steering wheel off, and they're like, oh, virtual safety car. And then you see the Ferraris pit, and you see Max pit, and Jensen did a great job explaining it wasn't as close as it looked in the pit lane as they all kind of came in and left. And they got free pit stops, Ferrari, and Checo got completely hosed. If they'd gone straight to safety car, however, and allowed them to bunch up, it probably would have been a little different in the way the pit stops were done. Possibly. But with the VSC, with the regulation of 40% speed, keeping them apart, it gives you a completely free pit stop. And I don't like the VSC and a safety car. Just call it a safety car. You know it's going to be a safety car.
See, I like the VSC. I like the VSC, and they've told the drivers they're going to do it, right? They're going to do VSC to give them enough time to make sure it's definitely safety cars. So if you decide to flinch under because it can work both ways. You can get screwed making your move during VSC. You can get screwed making your move under safety cars. So because I think we saw last week, it all comes down to good old lady luck, right? If you're in the right place at the right time on the track and a safety car comes out, and you can basically go in and if you're the leader, go and get a free pit stop, and then before you get picked up by the safety car is a million miles different than if you happen to be somewhere else on track. So it's just lady luck. That's all that really went against Perez today. I don't think it was the VSC that did it.
No.
It was just.
I'm not saying that went against him. It was lady luck. He was in early. I mean, he got screwed regardless of what was a virtual safety car or full safety car. I'm just saying, have some gumption, race control, and call it a safety car right away, and don't go from virtual to full. It's going to be a safety car. You're going to have to bring a crane out on the track and have people working on the car. But no, we're going to do one lap of virtual just to figure it out. What? I'm sure there's more behind it than that, and I'm sure there's a reason they do that. It annoys me.
And then we had like a couple of things around all of this. We had we kind of already touched on this with the Carlos and Perez safety car line thing, which I got to be honest, I had no clue what they were talking about because I didn't even know that line was painted on the floor. And suddenly everyone's on the radio going, "Oh, he did this, he did that. He's got to give the place back." I'm like, "What's happened?" I don't think I fell asleep for these last couple of minutes, but
I actually wrote in my notes. Yeah, what is that line?
It's a magic line where people get angry. I don't even know what it is. I haven't even had time to go and research before this pod, so if anybody wants to tweet us or let us know and educate us, we'll be happy to find out what it is. But
at F1 Dirty Side on Twitter, would love it. I mean, I get when the safety car peels out and you have to restart, and usually that's by the start finish or a variety of places where you have to get going and give it the beans. But I did not know about the safety car line, and it's right at Jeddah. It's right after the pit lane exit.
Yeah.
So Carlos definitely made it there first. And again, you heard my complaint about letting the teams try to work it out themselves. He should have been starting third at the restart, not fourth. And speaking of the restart, people who have listened know I respect the heck out of Max. I like him. He's fun to watch drive. He's a great driver. His restarts are really annoying at this point, where he pulls up next to the car next. So I want to just walk over to him and say, please stop doing that. It's driving me crazy. Just stay behind the car in front of you. And I know he's not apparently breaking any of the rules, and I guess it makes sense, but it's just annoying.
But also, have we ever even seen it work yet? He's got this, I'm smarter than you, I'm going to come up alongside you, I'm not going to go past you because that would break the rules, and I'm going to intimidate you, and I'm going to get the upper hand in the restart. I think I've seen him do it 3 times, and I've never seen it make him better. In fact, Charles has had the number twice now, this week and last week. He's waited for him to come alongside him, and then when he's had to do the obligatory kind of pullback, just in case he accidentally overtakes, that's when Charles floors it. It hasn't
last
worked
week
twice.
he ran him into a bad angle on the corner in Bahrain, and this week he kind of ran him almost off track. In a corner and started there. It's the same thing my wife does when she's annoyed at me, and she'll say, "Not touching, can't get mad," and get right in my face, and that's what that is. Not touching, can't get mad. Max, you're better than that, man. Just stay behind and gun it at the same time.
And then we have to call out here at the restart, if you're a George Russell fan and you sat and watched the whole race, you had your one moment of him being on TV.
That was for Lee. That was for our listener Lee from a couple weeks ago from the 100 Seconds of DRS. We know you're a big George fan, Lee.
And unless you wrote the note down, I'm going to even let everybody down by not even have written down who he did it. I just wrote in my notes, George made a fantastic move after the restart to take a place, and I didn't even write. I was so busy watching everything else, I didn't even write who he took. And TV didn't even really replay it either. I thought, poor old George, he finished really well, but he just had a bit of a lonely race where I don't think he got involved with anybody. He was just kind of in that buffer. It might have been
K-Mag, because I know K-Mag and Lewis were still out on the hards. We'll talk about Lewis and his bad luck on the hards, because he was up there. And yeah, I mean, those hard tires, I still don't understand the whole tire situation. I'm going to get into Lewis's pit stop that he couldn't make under the VSC because the pit lane was closed later. We'll get into that. But as they restarted, one thing I would note, and I love people's thoughts on this, and maybe even your thoughts, Rob. I know I normally don't give a crap what you say, but the porpoising in the Haas is far worse than any other car. And either that or the suspension is so much. I don't understand. You watch Kevin come down the straights, and he's popping up and down compared to the other cars. The only other person I see with a decent amount of porpoising still is Charles, actually. But Kevin, it seems like 2 times as much as anyone else. And it just. Are they going to be able to figure this out? I mean, like,
well, will they need to? Because I've got to be honest, that has looked fast today. There was one where he didn't even need DRS and he just kind of creamed. In fact, we went into about a 3-lap spell of Hamilton on K-Mag and back again. And that was Haas against Mercedes. And, okay, we know Mercedes haven't got the pace this year, but this is Haas. They finished last year on 0 points. Right. And here is K-Mag porpoising away down the straight, but still being faster than cars around him. So, I mean, they've obviously got to sort it out because it's not optimum. But it didn't show today. It's not like he was struggling for pace.
But I'll just say this. Last week I thought I learned the porpoising is worse for low-speed corners because you have to come to a more of a stop and it slows you. It's harder to control the car when it's bouncing up and down. So at a high-speed track, there's less slow-speed corners that you have to control the porpoising for and then get the brakes going. So hopefully they can get that fixed. I'm just worried. This is what I said last week, that they may not. This could be a Braun situation where they start off on fire and everyone catches them. I'd like them to get that fixed because I have to give this note right after the Kevin and Lewis back and forth, which, by the way, we learned about people purposely slowing up for the DRS line. And we all know what the DRS line is, right? Well, in case not, for anyone who's new, it's where the detection zone is. If you're 1 second behind the car or less, 1 second or less behind the car in front of you, when you come around the next DRS zone, you get the DRS, the drag reduction system, where the rear wing opens and you go faster. So Charles was doing it. He did it last week. He did it this week. But Kevin did it on Lewis, I think. It looked like he did.
He did.
And it was perfect. I mean, it was so well played. I love the fact that with the cars following closer and being able to stay closer, now there are these like millimeter mind games where, I'm going to let you get ahead by a tiny bit so I can get the DRS at the zone, and then when we turn the corner and we hit the actual DRS area, I will have the rear wing open and blow past you. That is awesome.
Yeah. Jensen Button summed it up for me today perfectly because it's what I was thinking. And as I was thinking it, I'm thinking, I should be the commentator because I've just said exactly the same thing as Jensen has. But I think he's slightly better looking than me and he's got a pedigree as a racer. So on those 2 points, I think I'm probably behind in the pecking order. But otherwise I'm there, right?
50-50, yeah.
But,
awesome.
But anyway, the point was that when you get a pass done now this year, it isn't a guaranteed stick.
Right.
And in the past, you'll have a car that's been like chasing down the car in front. And if the guy in front can get his elbows out, we all kind of saw that Alonso's great defensive driving last year. But when the move finally gets done, then it's done. Whereas this year, it just doesn't seem done. And it's so good because we've had so many back and forths. He's got through, he's whether it's mind games with DRS, whether it's just generally the cars being able to, even if someone comes past you, you can just tuck right in behind them because you can follow this year. And this back and forth is just amazing. But now, the only person that didn't put a move on, if we're now kind of in the 25 to 29 of this race, the only set of notes that I have is a long, long stream of people that went past Hulkenberg. I was starting to feel sad as he was just going backwards.
Yeah. Well, what was fascinating to me as well, the highlight from those laps, I tweeted out, I didn't want to call it boring. Let's call it the mid-race lull or something. There was a Mike Crack sighting, and that was fun. Just to shout out to Mike Crack, in case you were curious how you doing. There's Mike Crack. So, it did. You're right. Hulkenberg got past. The only good news there really during that time frame was my bladder said box, and I was able to go to the bathroom and not miss anything.
You and me both. I mean, it's just literally we're in different places, so don't believe that me and Brian went to the bathroom together. So
no,
but,
we did not coordinate.
And then when I came back from my bathroom break, then we had a great kind of 4 or 5 laps of Alonso and K-Mag went at it. And that was great. It was awesome. And then my heart broke a little bit as we went through a triple whammy within a space of about 30 seconds. Alonso's cruising along with no power. Danny Rick's cruising along with no power. And Valtteri's parked up in the pit lane going, I'm done. I don't even know what happened yet. I haven't kind of
don't even know what happened. I mean, like literally they said at one point, Valtteri's coming into the pits. They called him into box just to get tires. And then Fernando had to cool the car. And then he only had 4th gear. And fourth gear is a great gear. If I'm Fernando, I'd stay out there and just keep racing in 4th gear.
Of course you would.
It's not as great as fifth or third per se, but just stick out there. But no, he definitely had the limp mode kind of situation. The car was too hot. Danny Rick, as you said, went out. He actually went out. I mean, like the power turned off on that bad boy, and he had to pull over. And then they showed Valtteri, and it was like so much was happening between the pit lane entry possibly being closed. Who stopped close to close it? What happened? Crofty is making even more errors than last week, and he's trying to clean this up. And then they show Valtteri for 10 seconds, not even 2 seconds, and Valtteri Bottas retiring the car. Why? And then he said it was his third pit stop. Was it? Or was it the one when he came in? We don't even know if he went back out. And if he went back out, did something happen during the pit stop? Maybe Pit Lane Paul can get us a report sometime this week and let us know what happened. But that was just, man, I was confused. Like you said, Fernando had been having an amazing race. Danny Rick, who was a little better than last week. And we'll talk about McLaren at the end because that was kind of the crazy thing. I don't know how Norris finished where he did because I literally have no idea. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yep.
But man, Hamilton got hosed with that pit lane being closed.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I'll let you take your train of thought on here, but to lead into it was, if we're talking about Lady Luck and timings with Perez the first time round, all of this one, there's probably a series of, I think, maybe a lap and a half, whereas if Lady Luck shines one way on Lewis and the pit lane opens in the right time, I think he finishes way up from where he did.
Yes.
But you're right. Go on, carry on your train of thought about him getting hosed.
He got hosed because the VSC, but they have to close the pit lane when it's not safe. And there were cars in front of the pit lane. For all we know, there were 2 cars. I mean, I think both Fernando and Danny's car were in that area. And, they're trying to manage those cars. There are marshals on track. I know it's in the pit lane side of the area, and I get that. But they're literally pushing the car. And then Lewis eventually gets into the pit. And here's the thing. Like, when he went by at first, and they called him in, he was literally next. He just passed it. And it reminded me of the greatest Lewis Hamilton pit lane call ever.
Keep it saying now.
Stay out. In.
Hey, man.
No, sorry, mate. Hey, just go.
So this wasn't quite as epic as when Kimmy's staying out. In. It wasn't quite that. But it was close. He just passed it, and they're like, box. He's like, oh, crap, I just went by, is what he basically said. And then they closed the pit lane, and he had to do a full penalty pit stop, meaning full time lost, normal pit stop. And here's what I don't get. And here's the tire guy in me, and I'm really sorry. 41. It's the 41st lap of a 50-lap race. There are 9 laps left. I'm good at the math. Why not put him on softs?
I didn't get that either.
They put him on mediums. 9 laps. You can't make softs last 9 laps? Are they that bad? Or on the Mercedes? I don't get it. When he came out on mediums, I'm like, were they drinking in the pit box already? Like, why would you come out on... And I don't think I saw anyone run softs the whole race.
No, I think that there must have been something about that tyre that nobody fancied, because you're right. I mean, I'm trying not to pay attention to tyres, but you're kind of dragging me down with you. And when I saw the... See if I get it right now, Brian. When I saw the yellow stripe go on, not the red, I was like, oh my gosh, why aren't they softening him up to the end? But no. And the other piece just on the timing was that, did you see when he came back round again and the pit lane was still closed, where he kind of just missed going in the first time? I don't think he was much beyond the pit line the second time, maybe a couple of corners the next time round where they went green flag and went racing again. Literally, if he'd have just been 500 yards higher up the road, he would have come straight in then. But anyway, it was what it was. You're right. It definitely cost him positions. You're totally right.
He'd done a good job working his way through the field, and it all got hosed by some bad luck on the timing there. And then the second amazing back and forth. There were many, but the second back and forth of the race after the Alpinks. We're gonna kill that now. Was amazing when you had Max and Charles doing it again, second race in a row, but this time with only about 7 laps left. I had it starting on lap 43 and then continued 45, 46, 47. Charles again held the DRS, kind of that detection zone when he knew Max was going to have him. He slowed a tiny bit, and he kind of winked at the post-race interview with Coulthard and said, I want to make sure you get across that. It's a whole new kind of racing. I loved it. The Max and Charles, and you know what? Maybe I'm reading too much into watching it on TV, but it really feels like they enjoy racing against each other. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
feel like even if it had been the reverse outcome, if Max had finished, unlike last week, but if he finished second, I still think the two of them are up there kind of, enjoying what just happened.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's definitely respect between the two. And I mean, when you say about them two kind of the DRS line, I mean, there was the one where they both tried to get it, and there was that lockup, and there was smoke everywhere. But because it was a who's going to break the hardest to make sure that they're second, to make sure they pick up the DRS. That was absolutely crazy. But you've missed one piece out of this, Brian. You really have.
Well, there was one other thing happening at this time, but what else did I miss?
Well, okay, there was another piece. There was Hamilton was starting to. He was getting held up by Stroll, and he eventually got a good move on Stroll. But what really annoyed me, and I wrote down in capital letters on my notes, and I actually screamed at the TV, was stop showing me replays. We've got 3 laps of this Max versus Charles to go, and you're obsessed in slow-mo shows of the braking before the DRS zone. Well, great, show me that after the race. Get back to showing these two racing against each other.
Well, the Stroll-Hamilton thing, I'm happy they showed us the replay of that because you can't see everything at the same time. And you remember last year they tried that mini box all the time on the side of the screen. I haven't seen that a lot this year. I do have one other broadcast complaint, but first I want to get to the Stroll-Hamilton replay that they did show. And Lance was holding off Lewis. Eventually Lewis got past, but Lance was holding off Lewis. Lance took the inside, or outside because it was sort of a chicane. And I don't know, the real question is, did he have sufficient, what were the words? Sufficient position and significant room?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Did he have the corner?
Significant portion and significant room. So I thought it was great by Lance. And I'm apparently hanging out with Brits too much because I wrote in my notes, fair play by Lance. But I thought that was epic.
No, it was, and I get why they had to, but they just... Slow-mo doesn't need to be as slow in my book, right? You could quickly show us a replay of what happened. You don't need to slow it down to kind of that degree and then show it again from another angle. When there's the top two are going head-to-head and we're literally running out of laps, I'm kind of like, pick your moments, guys, pick your moments. So I was a little frustrated with the TV coverage at that point. The other piece that caught them by surprise then is, so we get Charles trying to come back on Max. That, I think, although he had him in the corners, the straight line speed is what just kept Max away from being attacked by Charles by the end. So, okay, over the line. Charles congratulates Max, which is really nice to hear as well. And then TV got caught out a little bit because they'd kind of already put up the finishing orders and they got, oh yeah, Max comes home, then Charles, then Carlos, then Perez, then Russell, then Ocon, then Norris. And then all of a sudden they were like, no, hang on. And you had Norris trying to take Ocon, and oh my gosh, it was a drag to the line. I wasn't quite sure he was going to get him, and he kind of was matter of meters, I think, away from taking him, right? But I don't think the TV commentators at that point realised that those two hadn't already finished, because they almost seemed to get caught unawares when those two came storming around the last couple of corners.
Well, I mean, after a race like that with Max and Charles back and forth at the end for the win, I think when Max crossed first and Charles second, I think Crofty had lit up a cigarette and was done. And then he is like, oh, crap, we're still going. And so that brought up a question for me at the end. And Alex and Lance got in a tangle there. And I honestly, at first, I thought it was Alex dive bombing in, as Lance said. But then, I rewound it after the race and I watched it quickly again. Alex did have, significant position and sufficient portion of car, or whatever the heck the words are. So I don't know if it's on anybody, and I'm not smart enough to make a call there, but Alex's car was on the side of the track, and it was double waved yellows, and no one did anything for 2 laps. They just went racing the whole time. And I know people are saying they lifted a little, and there's some investigation still occurring, and the joke was everyone's going to have to be investigated. I have to be honest, that was like the end of the race. Alex, just sit in your car, sit on the side, just wait for 2 laps for everybody to go, because everyone just kept going. Did you see anyone slow down? And it was so confusing because it went yellow, double waved yellow, green, double waved yellow, green, and like they couldn't figure out what the heck's going on. It was weird.
I'm with you. I think they screwed something up in race control, if I'm honest, because I'm absolutely with you. You saw the double wave yellows come up. Then it seemed to get downgraded to a yellow. Then I think it went back to double, and then it went to green. How is a driver supposed to work out what the heck is going on in such a limited amount of time? I just think they messed that one up because What are they going to do? I mean, I was watching the Twitter feed, thinking, well, can I be sure in this result? I was just about to say like K-Mag came ninth and got more points for Haas. Again, solid drive, but now he's one of the ones under review. But then the more of it kind of unfolded, they kind of made it sound like almost the whole of the final 2 laps are under review. Well, if every driver's under review, if you want to save face, you don't penalise anybody and you give all the drivers a slap on the wrist for not obeying the yellow flags and you move on and you dust it under the carpet because it was just confusing.
It was confusing. And I would say this, as you mentioned, having Lando come home and almost take 6th from Esteban, it begged the question for me, Lando was 7th? Like, where did that come from? The whole race, he was in the 14 range beyond, and we saw a little bit of McLaren when the race got boring. And then all of a sudden at the end, we see Lando come in home 7th, almost 6th. And I looked at the results. You had Max and Charles, you had Carlos, Sergio, hard luck Checo. That was a tough one from a luck perspective. Then George, way behind, 32 seconds behind the winner. And then way behind that was Esteban, 56 seconds back. So you had some massive gaps. And as we know, right behind Esteban was Lando. And then a few more gaps, Pierre, and then K-Mag, and 10th was Lewis, who got a point. The interesting thing, do you know who was 11th?
No, I only wrote down the top 10. I didn't look at the...
Zhou Guanyu. Zhou finished 11th, and he, speaking of bad luck, something I didn't have in my notes to talk about, his penalty that was applied at his pit stop was not his fault, that his team got confused and touched the tire and then stopped and held again and then touched the tire again. And he had to come back through again for a drive-through penalty. He started the race going in reverse, anti-stall, penalty, which he earned, but then the team screwed up serving it because the front jackman fell down. They brought him back through for a stop and go, or a drive-through, and he still finished 11th. So fair play to Zhou. He got points last week and made all that happen this week. I'm excited to see what Alpha can do when they get all this going in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned about the jacks because I like it sometimes when you think the commentators just made something up because in the heat of the moment they just need to say something. And he actually said when it showed that replay of him coming in to take the penalty, the first jackman, whatever you said, fell over. Yeah. But they said on the TV, they went, oh, yes, and there was a mix-up there. They brought the wrong jack out. They got to get the right jack to cut the car off the ground. And when he went back and took his place next to the other guy, from my view anyway, those were 2 identical jacks. I didn't think they had specific jacks for specific cars. Maybe
I would hope
maybe
not.
We can get Paul's input on that. But
that would be silly.
I think he just made that one up just to have something to say in the heat of the moment.
What looked like, again, in quickly watching it, it looked like the guy gets the car up on the jack, and then everyone's holding by the tires, and then he loses the jack, and people start grabbing the tires before 5 seconds, and the next jack guy comes in, jacks it up, and people just go to work. A couple people held, like, we didn't get the whole 5 in, let's get 1 or 2, but it's too late. It's 5 consecutive seconds, and F1 obviously didn't like that, so they sent him back through, and he still finished 11th, so way to go, Zhou. That's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought it was quite a race. Any things for you in summary, Rob?
No, it's just. I'm really hoping we haven't peaked too early at the beginning of the season. Me and you both put a lot of stock in the new cars as we were doing kind of our previous episodes building up to the new season. I think we were both off on the side. We were both a little bit nervous that it was all going to blow up on our face and it was going to be procession time all over again. And we are 2 races in and we're having fantastic races. Yes, we've had in both races a kind of, like you called it, a mid-race lull where just everything's kind of settling down, people are working out strategies, and maybe we don't have as much action. But do you know what? We had some races last year when that was the entire race. So it'll be interesting to see when we go to a circuit which is traditionally not good for overtaking and traditionally boring race, if that one gets spiced up. I can't think of what the first one coming up is. Australia's next, and that one actually sometimes can be a little bit processional, so it'll be interesting to see what Australia throws up for us. But we've actually got a week off now, haven't we? We don't get to... I like this back-to-back stuff, but we've got a Survivor week without a race. I think Australia's 2 weeks today, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That is correct.
And it's going to be I'm still debating what I'm going to do as to whether I'm going to try to get up and watch it at 1 a.m. or whatever it is.
It is. It's midnight Central, 1 a.m. for you. Yeah, I don't know. I know our friend, just to talk fantasy real fast, our friend Mark, who was on not this week's 100 Seconds of DRS, but Australian Mark, Cyber Cynic on Twitter, he finished first last week. And I know we kind of referenced that in our F1 league, but we weren't sure. So I just wanted to clean that up. Kudos to Mark for finishing first in week 1. We had a new joiner to the league who brought their team with them, who actually had more points than both Mark and I. But they weren't with us for week 1, so they don't get the shout out. And week 2 is still closing as we speak. We'll make sure to cover that both socially and next week.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly on that one, Brian. It doesn't look like it's fully updated yet, but if I click on mine, I can see my total for the week. I was just interested in what your total might be showing.
I'd have to do the math. Here and bring out a calculator.
Do you think it's more than 199 points?
Is that what you have this week?
Oh, well, apparently so.
Oh, crap.
No, it's not. That's my total. My race week still says 0. I'm just busting your chops.
Okay.
I don't know what mine is either. I was kind of hoping it was going to update because I do think I've beaten you this week because I think you got the negative points for Yuki not even starting. Everything else, we're pretty similar on most of our drivers and team, I think. So it's... Somehow Mick didn't get me negative points by the looks of things.
What? I got negative points for Yuki and Valtteri. I'm not in good shape when you have 2 of 5 drivers bringing you home negatives.
So it looks like they're not giving Mick negative points for did not finish because he did not start either. But then neither did Yuki, so I'm not quite sure about that one. But maybe it's because he didn't even make it out of qualifying. Who knows? But I'm happy because I think there's going to be the news that me and you will have gone tied 1-1 for.
Yeah, I'm assuming you'll beat me. I mean, like I told you, I got a little too high, flew too close to the sun on wings made out of butter in week 1. But now I back to earth. Yeah, I mean, I traded in Carlos and George for Max and Yuki, and the Yuki move cost me at this point the negative 15. I should have just played nobody.
So, I mean, actually, just as we look ahead, I mean, we'll do a proper preview for Australia next week, but just tying back into Mick, I thought it made total sense what Haas did in terms of, okay, he got a clean bill of health, and maybe they could have got a car built for him. I'm sure there's the ability to have got him on track if they really wanted to. But budget being what it is, Saudi track being what it is, what would the chances be that them as a team probably really can't afford to write off a second car? So I think it just made more sense to just have, well, Mick, you might have some after effects. Maybe there'll be some concussion that comes through. Probably not. But I could get why they didn't decide to try and put him on track because they don't have the biggest budget in the world, right?
Well, and like you said, you got to start. The story was they had a spare chassis they could start rebuilding from. But I mean, that's an awful lot of work too. You end up using one of your 8 overtime permits, which Red Bull used one this week, just as for nerds who watch the news come through from FIA and Formula One. So, yeah, I agree. I thought it was smart not to put him out there, and I just hope he's all ready to go in Australia in 2 weeks' time.
Right, so we've got another 100 seconds of DRS guest this week. Apparently a friend of Brian's, but I'm still figuring that he may have paid somebody to come on to say that he's a friend of Brian's. But here we go. We're going to welcome Mark to our 100 seconds of DRS. Welcome, Mark.
Rob, thanks for having me, man.
This is, I got to say it's exciting. And yes, Mark's an actual friend of mine. So before you try to say he isn't, we've been friends for over 20 some odd years at this point.
Yeah, the number is staggering at this point, how old we are.
And I know before we started, we told some inappropriate stories. If other people want to hear those, they're going to have to join us on an off week episode where we talk about some of those things. But Mark, thanks for joining, man. Could you tell us a little bit about, because I know how you kind of got into F1 really was from a text I sent, but tell the listeners a little bit kind of how you got in and how you enjoy it at this point.
Yeah, so if you would kind of asked me a year ago, like, name an F1 driver, I just would have just like shrugged my shoulders and just like said a name, like I would have said Andretti, right? Like I would have just said something nonsensical. It was not on my radar. And you sent me a text, probably over Christmas break, holiday break, of I'm starting a F1 podcast, and I immediately said, I probably just like sent a bunch of emojis immediately, and then was like, what are you talking about? And then you started talking about how you're really into F1 and not a lot of podcasts, you think it's a good opportunity, and you're just really enjoying it. And being the I would say amazing friend that I am, said like, all right, I want to support you, but to support you, I have to know somewhat what you're talking about. So I went and watched season 3 of Drive to Survive, and really got into it. I binged it in like a weekend, and then just started reading. And I was just like, this seems like something I can take on as like a weekly watch. It's not having to learn a new set of players in like college basketball every year, right? Like that's a lot of research. Like this is a very low amount of work sport to follow if you were just following it on my level, right? Like when you guys start talking about tires and stuff, I completely tune out and just
You mean when Brian talks about tires? Just Mark, everyone tunes out when Brian talks about tires.
But I was like, this is good for me, right? Like it's once a week, 20 names I have to remember, 10 teams. Like this is a very, very easy thing, and it's exciting, and the Netflix show does a really great job of just like telling you who the people are, right? So you can root for person or team, and it's so yeah, it's a perfect sport for someone in their mid 40s that doesn't have tons of free time anymore, but still has like an hour and a half on the weekend. You can sort of just watch a race. So that is my 4-month tale into going from a not fan at all to casual, somewhat fan.
So
I feel like I'm gonna be on an F1 commercial for that pitch.
Exactly. Yeah, you nailed it. So the one thing I
like the sport.
The one thing that I found amazing is last weekend you started texting me the odds of different drivers winning the race or winning the championship, and I realized you're a gambling addict and you're enjoying this part of it too.
I wouldn't say I'm a gambling addict, but again, like it's something you can put a few dollars on and just sort of have another interest beyond just like the actual sport of it. To say like last week it was Leclerc was not the favorite, and I was like, oh, this is nice, make a few dollars or winning on Ferrari. So like it's not like I'm like throwing thousands of dollars, but like it's nice little added bonus to this that they've legalized gambling in most states other than Illinois, so to enjoy the sport as well.
Well, I think PointsBet owes me a little bit of the profit they make off you or whomever you're using, but we'll let that slide. So obviously the highlight of your spring break is this opportunity to do 100 seconds of DRS. And as we were kind of talking earlier, and you mentioned to Rob, you listen at 1.7 times to your podcasts. So this will be very slow for you. We anticipate a perfect run for you since you'll have so much free time as you do this. Yes?
You think that, but as soon as you ask me one question, that I might be passing. I don't have an answer to that question, so we'll see what you have.
All right. Well, Rob, are you ready to hit the timer?
I have the timer ready. Are you two ready to go?
I am ready. Mark, are you ready?
Do it.
Right, so I will count you guys in, and then I will hit the timer, and away we'll go. So 100 seconds of DRS in 3, 2, 1, go.
Who is your favorite friend from college?
Kevin Ewan.
Who's the favorite F1 driver on the grid currently?
Carlos Sainz. However you pronounce his name.
Sainz, you nailed it. What's your favorite food?
I think just to be like a Philadelphia stereotype.
Well, how would you pronounce water?
So I originally, when Brian first met me, would say, "Give me a glass of water."
And now?
Now I'd say, "Could I please have a glass of water?"
Ah, very good. Least favorite errand or chore to run?
I say getting gas.
What's your favorite car in terms of looks of the 2022 cars?
Of the actual ones racing in F1?
Yeah.
I'll say the Mercedes.
And what's your favorite non-motorsport sport?
Pro basketball.
Who's your favorite
NBA
team?
basketball. Well, it's the Sixers, but it's really the Grizzlies right now. That's who I enjoy watching most.
Is John Morant your favorite player in the NBA right now?
The whole team is just exciting to watch.
You got it.
You know that
Sleep
by all the
in?
texts I say.
Yeah, I do know that. Sleep in or up early?
Up at 5 o'clock every day.
Coffee or tea?
Numerous cups of coffee.
So this one may be a hard one, but what's your favorite F1 track?
I'll say Austin, just because it's not run by a dictatorship.
Favorite musician or musical group?
Just say the National.
It's that was time, but I wanted to let you answer. So you.
I wanted to know if it's pronounced GIF or GIF in your mind. So I'm going to go one
GIF.
extra.
The guy who said it before he died. He said it was GIF.
But isn't the G for graphics?
So what? Like, there are a lot of words you could like be like, logically this sounds right, but this is how we pronounce it.
Well, it's still GIF in my mind. Mark, thanks so much for joining us, man. It was great connecting, and I love the fact that you've kind of gotten into this, and I really appreciate your support, Rob, and I appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot.
You make it enjoyable to continue to watch, so appreciate all the stuff you do every week.
No, thanks a lot, Mark. Really appreciate it, because you really are the kind of listener that we're trying to tap into here, which is turning the tide of America to get everyone on the Formula One bandwagon. So get out there with your pom-poms, rah-rahs, and spread the good word of the dirty side. Pleasure to meet you, Mark.
I'm really starting to love having these the DRS sections. I just think it's really great when we're actually talking to people that actually listen to us, and it keeps making it feel a little bit more real each time. So we're almost at the end of our tank of people that we had locked and loaded to go. So this is the shout out to everyone. As you can tell from Mark today, you don't need to be a seasoned veteran. He's literally found out about this sport since we've been on air. So please get involved. Please sign up. Throw your name in the hat to do 100 seconds. And just a little shout out here. Jim and Josh, I'm coming for you.
And there are a couple other folks on Twitter who have been very active with us, and I'll shoot them a DM this week as well and see if we can get some sign-ups to get some recorded in the near term. So really appreciate it, and just fantastic. And we have some surprise last-minute addition to the episode. Rob, you want to highlight what we were lucky enough to receive?
Yeah, we've set ourselves a goal of trying to sit down and record this within a couple of hours of the race finishing, which we're managing to do. But we also know that kind of puts a bit of pressure on our good old friend Pit Lane Paul to be able to record anything and send it over. So we kind of were thinking it's late over there, we're not going to get anything. But almost as we were wrapping this up, we had the ding of an email hitting our account. So you've heard our bozo's view of what we thought went on in Saudi. So over to Pit Lane Paul, but I did send him a screen print of Sky have started to frame out Paul di Resta as Pit Lane Paul. I'm not happy about this. I'm pretty sure they've stolen that off us, but let's hear from our Pit Lane Paul.
Hi all. So, yeah, second race done. Actually very exciting in the end. Last few laps are very good with the Verstappen-Leclerc battle. It's good to see cars racing and following, so it does show that the new regulations are actually doing something. They are working. Apart from that, it was actually a good race compared to what we had last year. It was actually an okay race. There were some good battles, good overtaking. On the whole, it was reasonably positive. It was a strange weekend with what happened on Friday with the missile attack that was widely publicised, but if the truth be told, there was no real impact on us at the circuit as such. They were never going to target us there, so it's not that we didn't feel safe. It was absolutely fine, but needless to say, these things will always cause that sort of reaction. But back to the racing, yeah, it was pretty good weekend. Personally for us with Valtteri, hugely disappointing. The car was super quick. It would have been P6 no matter what. But that's racing. You've got to take those moments, as much as they really disappoint you. The promises there with the car was quick. We thought we could be behind the Alpines, but we were actually quicker than them. So yeah, a shame for us personally. But again, a great race, great advert for F1, and yeah, these things keep getting better. Off to a track, an old track next in Melbourne, an old classic track. So yeah, let's see how we perform there, and let's see how the racing goes. But 2 out of 2 done, and I think they've been 2 out of 2 very, very, very good events. Catch you all soon.
Awesome, Paul. Thank you so much. That was tremendous to hear, and it was always great getting a report from someone who's actually at the race and knows what they're talking about, as opposed to, as Rob said, the bozos. But,
and on the note of people that know what they're talking about, we kind of let the anniversary go by. We just got carried away with the new season, but I was kind of reminded it as I was reading an article just now after the race of just over a year since the great Murray Walker passed away. It's kind of, he was a legend. He was the voice of Formula One for me growing up. And it's real sad that he wasn't around to see these new generation of cars, because I think he'd have absolutely loved it. But kind of, it happens. Time goes by, but sorely missed in the F1 arena, I would say.
Agreed 100%. His calls on some of the classic moments in F1 history are legendary, and we miss Murray. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to everybody for participating on the dirty side. I was actually on spring break this week, so you may have seen some spikes in the Twitter activity. Was I tweeting under the influence at times? Possibly. A little TUI. But back to work, back to life. So just wanted to say thanks to everybody for participating in the dirty side. Like Rob said, if you're interested in doing the 100 Seconds DRS at F1 Dirty Side on Twitter, our DMs are open, and or just send us a tweet, whatever works. We'll be setting those up shortly. And just wanted to wish everyone a great week. We're entering the month of April shortly. Hope everyone enjoys a change in the weather and a change for the better. So thanks everyone for listening. Have a great week.
We'll catch you next week for one episode before we head off to Australia. So yeah, like Brian says, catch you next week, guys.